Today, Canada speaks loudly about justice in faraway lands. It calls out countries like Sri Lanka for genocide and human rights abuses. But here's a question. Has Canada looked in the mirror? This is the story of how a nation accused others while burying its own truth. In recent years, Canadian politicians have used the word genocide to describe what happened in Sri Lanka during the final stages of its conflict with the LTTE in 2009. Tamil Genocide Remembrance Day is now officially recognized in parts of Canada, and Sri Lanka's reputation is under constant attack in diplomatic spaces, often shaped by powerful diaspora lobbying. What's often left out of Canada's narrative is this. The Sri Lankan government didn't launch a campaign of genocide. It launched a military operation to end nearly 3 decades of violent separatist conflict and to rescue civilians trapped under the control of one of the world's most ruthless terrorist groups. It was a struggle to defend the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Sri Lanka, a sovereign state fighting to remain whole in the face of a violent secessionist movement. The LTTE, or Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, was internationally recognized as a terrorist organization by over 30 countries, including Canada, the US, the EU, and India. It pioneered the use of suicide bombers, forcibly conscripted child soldiers, assassinated moderate Tamil voices, and even took the lives of national leaders, including Sri Lankan President Ranasinghe Premadasa and Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. In fact, the FBI once described the LTTE as among the most dangerous and deadly extremist groups in the world. The LTTE didn't just target soldiers, they waged a campaign of terror against innocent civilians across Sri Lanka. They bombed buses, trains, marketplaces, and public gatherings, killing men, women, and children of all ethnicities. In 1985, LTTE gunmen stormed the sacred Sri Maha Bodhi in Anuradhapura, killing at least 146 worshippers in one of the deadliest massacres at a Buddhist site. In 1998, they bombed the Temple of the Tooth in Kandy, one of the holiest shrines in Buddhism, killing 17 people and injuring dozens. In the eastern town of Kathankudi, LTTE militants entered 2 mosques during Friday evening prayers and massacred 147 Muslim men and boys, one of the deadliest attacks on a place of worship in Sri Lanka. Even Hindu kovils were not spared, especially when the local Tamil clergy or communities resisted LTTE control. Their campaign of terror did not discriminate, not even against the sacred. They assassinated Tamil politicians, Muslim leaders, Sinhalese civilians, and anyone who opposed their violent ideology. This was not a liberation struggle. It was a reign of terror. While the LTTE was responsible for horrific violence, the narrative around the military's response has often been distorted or oversimplified. In the final weeks, the Sri Lankan Armed Forces launched the largest humanitarian operation in the country's history, freeing nearly 300,000 Tamil civilians who were being held hostage by the LTTE. The LTTE used civilians as a human shield, preventing them from fleeing and even firing on those who tried to escape. Despite intense pressure and a complex battlefield, Sri Lanka's military carried out this operation with the goal of saving lives, not taking them. Yet today, selective narratives try to paint this rescue mission as genocide, while ignoring the LTTE's brutality and the reality on the ground. Sri Lanka carried out what may be the largest hostage rescue mission in modern history, freeing nearly 300,000 civilians held by the LTTE. In 2025, the city of Brampton, Ontario, unveiled a permanent monument called the Tamil Genocide Memorial. Standing nearly 5 meters tall in a public park, this structure was approved by City Council and endorsed by politicians like Mayor Patrick Brown. It features a book, a map of the so-called Tamil Eelam, and panels outlining alleged genocide against Tamils in Sri Lanka. But this is not a genocide recognized by the United Nations or by any international court of law. It is a heavily disputed and politicized narrative. Yet in Canada, this version is carved in steel, promoted in classrooms, and broadcast at public events. And this isn't just about remembrance. It's also about politics. Canadian politicians, especially in areas like Brampton, Scarborough, and Toronto, increasingly support these narratives to gain support from Tamil diaspora voters. So we must ask, is this really about justice or about vote banks? Canada has built a monument for a war it never fought, based on a version of history still under dispute. But before claiming moral high ground, perhaps it should first look inward, because not all truths are carved in steel and not all victims are remembered. For over a century, Canada forcibly removed more than 150,000 Indigenous children from their families. They were placed in church-run residential schools, where they were beaten for speaking their own languages, stripped of their culture, and often abused. Many died. Thousands were buried in unmarked graves. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada called this what it truly was: cultural genocide. From the 1960s to the 1980s, thousands more Indigenous children were taken from their families and given to white families, a move now known as the Sixties scoop. And even as recently as the 2000s, Indigenous women in some provinces were forcibly sterilized without full consent. Ethnic cleansing doesn't always come with guns. Sometimes it comes through policy. In 2019, Canada's own national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls concluded that the violence and the state's inaction amounted to genocide. Let that sink in. A Canadian government-commissioned report labeled its own history a genocide. But there were no sanctions, no global campaigns, and no accountability in the international sphere. So when Canada accuses Sri Lanka, or any nation, of genocide, it must first confront its own history. Justice should never be a political weapon. Moral authority must be earned, not assumed. The pain of Indigenous peoples in Canada is real, and their truth is still unfolding. But where is the global outrage? Where are the sanctions, the resolutions, the campaigns? Some wounds are remembered, others are ignored, and that, too, is a form of injustice. This isn't about denying wrongdoing elsewhere. It's about consistency. It's about balance. It's about truth, not just when it's convenient. As the world calls for justice, Canada must ask, have we truly delivered it here at home? This is Hela Nomad, uncovering truth, confronting silence, and remembering what the world forgets. Until next time.